Hi, seventh grade. I wanted to do a quick video today to talk about some of the things that where we left off yesterday. We left off several different things, and I want to make sure that we have everything we need going forward. We're in the middle of World War II, and it's a pretty big event, pretty major thing, and we want to make sure that we cover everything. So we had talked about this slide. We talked about Erwin Rommel being sent by the Germans to help Mussolini in northern Africa. He was sent down there by Hitler, one of the best generals Hitler had, to get the situation under control for Italy. Erwin Rommel came in there. He did a great job, but unfortunately for Erwin Rommel, the British sent in their guy, Bernard Montgomery. He is not listed in your notes, but he should be. Okay, Bernard Montgomery. He's in bold print in your book on page 336. Make sure you have his name. He was the British leader of the forces there in northern Africa. He went against Rommel, forced him back across northern Africa, and eventually up into Italy. They finally defeated the Axis forces in northern Africa, cleared the war out of North Africa in 1943-ish, maybe early 1944 by the time they were done. Okay, and then we talked about the war against Japan, the Pacific Theater as it's called. We talked about the Battle of Coral Sea and the Battle of Midway Island. I did not have time yesterday to mention the Doolittle Raiders. This was really important, and if you ever get a chance to hear from them, I think there may be one or two left that are living still. No, there's not. None of them are. But if you ever see, there are movies made about the Doolittle raids. Very, very good. This group of men flew planes into Tokyo early in the war. This was before we really could reach that far, before we did all the island hopping and all of that to get our forces close enough to reach Tokyo. The Doolittle Raiders took off from a aircraft carrier as close as we could get it to Japan without being noticed. They flew over Tokyo and dropped bombs, and then they didn't have enough gas to get back home. They knew that when they took off. So most of them landed in China, which, remember, was under Japanese control at the time. So many of them became prisoners of war. Many of them died in the flight. These were some brave, brave Americans who, the raids themselves were not that successful, but it did so much for the American morale, because the American people back at home knew that they were going. They heard about it afterwards. They were encouraged that we were finally attacking Japan after all this time of waiting since Pearl Harbor. We just wanted to get back at them, and the Doolittle Raiders did that. So it was a huge morale boost for the American people. And then what we're going to do from here, now that we've got control of we've won the Battle of Coral Sea. Remember, the first battle fought only at sea and in the air, no land involved. And then we fought the Battle of Midway Island. From there, we start island hopping. Now, what that means is we don't go to every island in the Pacific. There's thousands of them. But we see where Japan's stronghold is, and we hop over it to the next island and cut off their supply line. And then we take that island, we're good. Then we hop over the next Japanese island and cut their supply line again, gradually forcing the Japanese back to their homeland. Okay, so yesterday what we talked about were a lot of things that had gone right for the Axis powers. Today we want to start looking at some of the major turning points where the Axis powers are now on the run instead of being able to be successful in World War II. The first major turning point is Germany's decision to invade Russia. This was a stupid decision. There's no other way to look at it. Germany should have learned from Napoleon's mistake that invading Russia, even anywhere close to winter, is always a mistake. But he did. He invaded anyway, and he lost in the process close to 3 million men. The second major turning point of the war was Japan's decision to bomb Pearl Harbor. Had Japan never bombed Pearl Harbor, it is questionable whether America would ever have entered the war. And bringing the United States into the war was a big mistake, because once we were in it to win it. Okay. Another thing about Japan's bombing Pearl Harbor is that they didn't take out our aircraft carriers. All of our aircraft carriers were out to sea on maneuvers when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. So they didn't get any of them. They destroyed some of our warships, yes, and we had to rebuild those. Get it. Big point. But all of our aircraft carriers, that would have, if they had destroyed one or more of those, that would have seriously set us back, because building one of those would have taken months, if not years. They are enormous. So the third major turning point in World War II was America's entering in the European theater. We landed in Northern Africa to help Bernard Montgomery there and to defeat Rommel. And then we swept up through Italy. You know, Italy is the boot. So we swept up through Italy and started conquering Italy right away. I mean, as quickly as we could. It wasn't immediately. It wasn't in January of 1942, but it was very quickly. We were instrumental in the victory, excuse me, that the Allied powers had in Northern Africa. Okay, here's your map so you can see. We landed here in Morocco, Algeria area and helped push these forces this way. Rommel was had been in Egypt. Montgomery helped push him this way, and eventually they had to go up here into the island of Sicily and then up the boot of Italy. Okay, and we will do that. We will push all these forces up. Okay, all of these areas in these two orange colors are under Axis control. And we're going to start now fighting back and regaining some of that control. I'm not sure that we talked about that, so I need to go back to that. Okay. All right, next. We did invade Sicily, Italy. You saw that on the map on the previous slide. Once we pushed the Axis forces back into Sicily and then up Italy, we followed them. We chased them. The Allied powers did. Okay. Eventually, though, the next thing we need to do is invade France. And this will happen. This is an important date. You need to write this down and make sure you remember it. June 6th, 1944. This is the D-Day invasion of France. There is an old movie. It was done in the 60s or 70s called The Longest Day. And it is based on the true story of D-Day. It's a really good movie. I highly recommend it. But June 6th, 1944 was D-Day. It was the largest single-day invasion ever done. Massive invasion on France, 55-mile front of beaches, 175,000 men landed and established the beachhead that day. So D-Day is another critical not life-changing, but it was life-changing for many, major change in World War II. And of course, the last thing that was a major change in World War II was the dropping of the atomic bombs. We dropped 2 atomic bombs, one in Hiroshima and one in Nagasaki, in August and then in September of 1945. And we told Japan that the next one was coming to Tokyo, and that if they didn't want Tokyo bombed, they needed to surrender. We told them this in the end of August. Japan did formally surrender in the first part of September of 1945. What Japan did not know is that the American forces were lying about that. We didn't have another bomb to drop. We'd only made 3. We tested 1 and dropped 2. So we didn't have a third bomb to drop, but thankfully it wasn't needed. There's a lot that we could go into about all of that, but we will save that for another day, okay? We will get to the conclusion of the war later. I hope you have a good day, and I look forward to speaking with you later in the week.